You're listening to the Yes, I'm Still Sober podcast with John Rabin. Hello. Welcome to the Yes, I'm Still Sober podcast. I'm John Rabin, and this is episode 61. Recording this on August 21st, 2019. Hi, everybody. How are you doing? Great. Good to hear. I'm good as well. I just looked at my bank account and did math. But I actually enjoy math, but I don't enjoy worrying about money, as I have previously mentioned, probably the past couple of weeks with the whole looking for a roommate kind of thing. And the thing is that I actually saved money this past month. When I pay rent at the end of the month, I'm going to have more money than I started at the beginning of this month with no roommate. So I'm pinching pennies well, is what I'm saying. I probably should still get a roommate, or at least a series of temporary house guests who give me money in sort of this Craigslist run Airbnb kind of scenario. I don't know. Figure something out. But I was happy. I was like, hey, I'm not poor. I'm not as poor. That was kind of the thing. But emotionally, I'm doing great, as far as you know. This is just random, but if somebody out there can find a source online that confirms, those misters on patios and restaurants. We have one at work. All right. And these misters, just the spraying water is supposed to cool down the air. However, I feel like they're more effective in places like Arizona or Nevada, in a fucking desert that doesn't have humidity. That the idea that you've got a mister spraying more water into humid air, I don't think. Also, just misters, by the way, just spraying out so that it just gets surfaces wet, as opposed to, say, one of those misters on a fan. See, that makes sense to me when you have a fan and then the water misters are in front of it, and so the fan is dissipating it out into the air. That I can get on board with. But just the misters just shooting out and then it just kind of you're basically raining down on people immediately underneath you, making their napkins wet. I think it's useless. I think misters like St. Augustine grass don't belong here. I think that they were brought here against their will. They're going, we're not supposed to, be here in Central Texas in 103-degree summers. It just, with the humidity. And the thing is that I've looked online, but every site that says, no, it's actually a benefit, is by a company that sells misters or services that repairs them and maintenance. So I can't trust that shit. You can't trust the information from something that benefits that company. Like tobacco companies going, no, cigarettes are good. No, trust us. It's the same kind of thing. So if you see a thing that's an independent study that's not related to a company that installs water misters, send it my way, because I'm just, I think they're dumb. I think that they're a waste of money, and I don't think they actually do anything. And honestly, man, why the fuck would you eat lunch outside when it's 103? Get it to go. Like, what are you doing? Do you have to socialize that badly that you're willing to put your body at risk? That's crazy. It's crazy to me to do that. But it's just something I was wondering about. So I have an opportunity at work, I realize, to my coworker, Joe, the 19-year-old, who listens to this podcast, but that's fine. We've talked about this, where I've actually admitted to him, I was like, I've actually got an opportunity to provide some guidance and advice, because he's in a point in his life where he needs to, he's thinking about goals and the future, and I'm winding down and whatever the fuck I'm doing. But I've done a lot, and I've had a lot happen in my life. Keep it down back there. I'm trying to do a podcast. Jesus, this cat. So, I have all these opportunities to provide some kind of, some input that might benefit. And what do? I basically instead give him random grunge music data, just trivia and points of view based on my music I grew up with. He didn't ask for it. He doesn't ask for it, but I just throw it at him. He's sitting there going, oh, so, I am thinking about maybe possibly going to the military. I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah, you know what? Have you heard of the screaming trees? They're vastly underrated. Like, it's really useless. Like, I don't say anything he can't Google. But, he's not Googling grunge music info. Nobody is. Nobody needs to hear it, and yet I am just still going, you should check out Mudhoney. Hey, did you know that all these people that try to sound like Eddie Vedder, when in fact Eddie Vedder was trying to sound like Chris Cornell. Also, Lane Staley was very influenced by Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell is basically the reason why 90s alt-rock sounds that way. Stuff like that. Doesn't help you get a job. Doesn't help you with anything in life other than maybe I'll listen to, Mudhoney instead of doing something stupid. But I don't know. You should check out Screaming Trees and Mudhoney, though. If you're sober, I hope you keep being sober. If you're not sober, I hope you stay sane. And I just said that because I realized that I am not going to talk about really any kind of recovery shit today, I realize. I'm just kind of looking at some things or things that I'm thinking about, and I'm realizing today's just going to be about random bullshit. Mainly, we're going to talk about comedy. I'm going to probably talk a little bit about comedy because that's been on my brain because I haven't really focused on it that much on my podcast, really. Just talking about stuff that's been, a little bit. But before I do, I did want to, this is, there's a couple of things that people are saying, and I've had this said to me about 4 or 5 times related to these two topics. I've had people interject one of 2 bits of information because when they know that I'm vaping, I smoked cigarettes for 22 years, but actually that's more like 25. Yeah, it's like 25 years. Anyway, but so when they find out that I'm vaping, the 2 things I get, one is, that causes popcorn lung. And then they never say what they think popcorn lung is. And then the other thing is that it's got antifreeze in it, or if they've read more than just the title of an article, they go, contains propylene glycol, that's antifreeze. So that's two different things that people say. Excuse me while I get a glass of water. Yes, this is the sound of me drinking water. So a couple of things. First, popcorn lung. You may hear people say that. You may be wondering, what is popcorn lung? If you're like me, you thought popcorn lung meant because you're inhaling vapor that your lungs balloon up or some kind of crazy shit. That's not, and then it damages them or something, like blowing up your lung like a piece of popcorn instead of a kernel or some. No, it's none of that shit. It's called popcorn lung because it's damaging to the vessels in your lungs. And it's called that because of a chemical called diacetyl, which is this chemical that gives flavor, is a flavoring. It's a chemical that does flavor. It's what they used to put on popcorn in movies to make it taste like, buttery popcorn. They're not actually putting butter on it. They're putting stuff with diacetyl in it, so that it's butter flavored. But the popcorn lung, it's this damage, and it's called that because it's a rare thing, but it happens a lot with people who work in factories who manufacture this shit. So you're basically breathing it in. It also has damaged people who inhale it because they're addicted to it or trying to get high off of it. So it has nothing to do with your lungs blowing up like a popcorn kernel or anything like that. It's and actually vapes, so like some liquids, e-cig liquids have diacetyl in it for flavoring, like a lot of things. But it's still about 100 times less than the diacetyl you'll get in a cigarette. So there's still when you ingest anything, you've got a risk, but it's not to the point that people are saying. And they're sharing some dumb, stupid post about it. It's like, look, this person got popcorn lung, and it's got a picture of this guy who's all fucked up. Turns out the picture of the guy he's all fucked up in the face, and he looks that way because an e-cigarette that he assembled incorrectly blew up in his face. So it's not even related. But that's one of those things that people are sharing, and it's dumb. And the other thing, by the way, so the other thing was the propylene glycol, which is also in some e-liquids, e-cig liquids for flavoring, that it's antifreeze. All right. Antifreeze, most antifreeze is actually ethylene glycol. Propylene glycol is significantly way safer, to the point that the FDA approves propylene glycol to be used in different foods for flavoring, and including propylene glycol was in Fireball whiskey. I don't know if you remember that. That was a big thing that really hurt their sales, because people were like, there's antifreeze in my whiskey. Like, that was the reason you shouldn't drink Fireball whiskey. The reason you shouldn't drink Fireball whiskey is because it's not supposed to taste like fucking candy, you guys. Whiskey, if you're going to drink whiskey, it's got to be, as Ralph Wiggum would say, it tastes like burning. It's got to taste like burning. You gotta really taste it killing you. That's how you know it's whiskey. Fucking putting cinnamon flavor in shit. Just get the fuck out of here, man. Don't drink whiskey then. It's dumb. Anyway. So yeah, but that's the thing, is that there are some antifreeze that use propylene glycol instead, and those are safer. Propylene glycol is not antifreeze. Antifreeze happens to contain normally ethylene glycol, but also sometimes propylene glycol. So anyway, why did I dedicate this? I think here's the thing that I get. I just, much like the thing I was talking about with the misters, this kind of shit, I would like information. If people are going to talk shit about vaping, talk shit about what it really is that you don't like, which is that it's douchey, is that it's a noise. It's visibly annoying. It's like when people say, yeah, no vaping indoors in this bar or in this room or something like that. It's because you don't like seeing it. When you see somebody do it, it's like, Jesus Christ, this fucking guy. It makes way for people who are vaping weed, and then you smell that and you find that to be annoying. That's fine. But if you're going to throw out, statistics or things that are harmful, at least be accurate, and at least have good sources, because it's just, otherwise you're wasting everyone's time, and it makes you look stupid. Because that's the thing about what I like about vaping, is like, I smoked for so long because smoking made me feel cool, and I think it made me look cool. Till you get to a point where you're like, okay, now I'm starting to cough up a lung. I've been doing this for a quarter of a century. Maybe I should stop, because breathing and living seems more important. So that was the thing about smoking, was that it made me feel cool. Also, a little bit of a buzz, and it totally takes the edge off of shit. I like to vape because it gets me my nicotine fix, so it takes the edge off. It gives me a little bit of a buzz. But more importantly, the vaping does not make me look cool. It annoys people, and annoying people makes me feel cool. That's the bottom line. That's why I like to vape. Does this bother you? Yeah. Good. Yeah. So, anyway, I said we were going to talk about comedy. Maybe we'll finally talk about comedy. So, although I said this like I have this big presentation about what comedy is like now and my opinions of it, of the industry as a whole, and I don't. I just have never really talked about it head on. I've, glanced off of the topic of stand-up, when promoting my own shit or saying I'm doing this or that or things I'm thinking about. It's weird. There's a shit ton of it. In Austin, there's lots of shows, lots of mics, and people are coming out to them. Like, doesn't matter the quality of the show, people are going. Just all different kinds of shows. People are just going. And I've been kind of predicting this crash of, this, where, Netflix has way too many specials. They're just dumping specials after special on there, and a lot of it's garbage. It's coming. There's overloading. People are going to get sick and tired of it. Of course, I've been saying that for 5 years now. So it's, I can't, I don't know at what point I'm going to go, well, maybe not. I mean, it does cycle, but, I have no idea when stand-up will lose its popularity again, and we'll be back to the way it was in like 99 to 2004. Just this 5-year dead zone of comedy where people are like, whatever. But there are a lot of shows out there. There's a lot of different types of mics and shows popping up at every single type of venue. So do me a favor here. If you were considering going to a comedy show, and you don't recognize any of the names on it, you're just like, well, it's a comedy show. Let's go see some comedy. Message me first, and I'll let you know if it's okay. I don't care if you're, I don't care if you're in a different place other than Austin, Texas, and you're going, well, how are you you don't know the comics in Boise? How are you going to tell me what I can tell? Because you're going to send me the flyer or the ad for the show, and then I'm going to look at it and go, okay, you know what? This is what you're in for. You're going to a fucking sports bar. They've got 20 TV screens, and there's no way they're not cutting them off. People are not going to stop playing pool. They've got a stage probably shoved in a corner, and there's no cover. So these people are probably not getting paid. I doubt the sports bar gave them any money. They're like, yeah, sure, do your little shit, do your little skits in the corner. It's not going to be the best show. So go if you're watching the game and you'd rather hear a bad dick joke than bad company on the jukebox. Like that. Like I'll let you know based on it's like, oh, all right. On a scale of 1 to 10, this show is a 3. Be prepared for a 3. Stuff like that. Or a restaurant comedy show. There's nothing worse than ambush comedy when you're trying to eat dinner with your kids. Just, just like, there's nothing like doing comedy in a place where 75% of the people there didn't know that there was going to be comedy. It's at that point, it's a hostage situation, isn't it? It's just, it's not a good show. But because there's so many of them. And the whole idea is, at least in this scene, and I just wherever, it does not matter. Like, it's not, you don't reach a certain level as a comic and then you get to do a show. Anybody can do a show as long as they can convince the manager or owner of the place that the show is happening. If you can convince them that you're legit and can make them money, they'll let you have a show. So you've got people who have been doing comedy 9 whole months who suddenly have a fucking show, and they use it as like suddenly they've got substance, like there's something to them now. It's almost like a barter chip, to where it's like, oh, I got this show, now I can barter and deal with other shitty ass comics who have their own show. Now we're doing all these shows. And this is how I'll actually get stage time that's not an open mic. As opposed to normally where comics go to open mics and they get better and better, and then they get noticed by people who have shows who actually care about their shows. And long-running, established comedy shows that have a good rep, and they see people that are new but that are funny and that have potential, and they're like, yeah, all right, I'm going to give him a spot, I'm going to give her a spot, that kind of thing. And that's sort of the natural progression. But these kids today don't have patience. They don't want to develop an actual act over a couple of years, so they get their shows. They convince a laundromat to let them do a comedy show in the corner in between the dryers and the washers in that middle area where people are folding their laundry. You ready for some comedy, ma'am? So if you're unsure about a show, but you want to see some skits, I don't know, just message me. I'll let you know. I've had people, I've had people ask me, like coworkers, like brand new coworkers, like when they come in, they're like, oh yeah, John's a comedian. And at first they go, really? He doesn't seem funny. Because I'm not. I'm kind of an irritable prick at work because people aren't doing their job. And somebody's got to tell them. No, but yeah, so it's like, they're like, that guy's a comedian? He doesn't seem funny. But then they, their small talk, they'll ask me like, so what kind of comedy do you do? And that always throws me for a loop. I'm like, because I sit there and I go, like, and I the last guy that did it, he just got hired at the restaurant, and he's like, so what kind of genre of comedy do you do? And I just stared at him, and he's like, what? And I went, man, it's not you. It's just that it's your question. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know. I talk about things that irritate me and also heroin. Like, I don't know how to, I don't know how to best describe myself to a random person I work with. It's like my comedy. Oh, it's, I should just go, props. I use props. And then go back to washing dishes. In fact, that's what I'm going to start doing. I'm just going to say props. Props. End of discussion. Okay, so I will say this, though. After, blasting new comics for wanting stuff too quickly, people are like, I want to be famous now. It's, of course, people become funny, or they get funnier and develop an act faster, or who they are on stage, an identity, a voice, at different paces. And, they've got to be allowed to try and fail and, and do, and that's the thing, is that they create a show when they're not ready and the show sucks, and then they learn from it, and then the next show that they create, it's less shitty, hopefully. And then you just get better. Like, and I forget that sometimes. I sit there and I go, what the fuck are these people doing? They're failing and learning from it and getting better. That's just, it's kind of like you. Very much like you. Lots of failure. But I will say this, if you go to a comedy show, and a lot of them are free because people don't like to pay for entertainment anymore. So if you go to a free comedy show, man, tip those fuckers, will you? Just, it makes all the difference in the world when new comics, or just any comic, no matter what the level, it doesn't matter how much they make. If you get enough people tip and they leave, with just a few dollars, it's just the principle of it. They go, you know what? I got paid for comedy. This is not a complete waste of time. It's always, it'll help out. And if it was, if you enjoyed it, man, tip them. And, just because there'll be a tip jar, there's some way to, usually to give them money. So I just, if you enjoy entertainment, music, bands too, just if you enjoy entertainment, man, fucking tip starving artists, will you? Another thing people ask me, and I'll probably end after this, but another thing people ask me is they ask me about a comedian that they've seen. And it's funny because rarely does anybody ask me about a comedian that they've never heard of, or that they just heard of, to get my input on whether or not they should check them out. It's usually they like a comedian, and then they want that confirmation from me that yes, indeed, that comedian is funny. So they ask me, hey, so what do you think about so-and-so? And I usually respond in one of three ways. Number one, I love that comedian, or that comedian's really funny. Or number two, that's not my type of comedy. It's not my thing. And when I say that, it means that I don't find that comedian funny at all. But I recognize, their longevity in the business, how long they've worked. Do they have a fan base? Because comedy is subjective. All that stuff, are they an artist, basically, kind of a thing. And if they are, even though I don't like them and it's not my thing, but they're successful, but they're really good at what they do. If they're good at what they do, that's what I'll say. However, the third thing I say is they're garbage. Just no thank you. And just a list of, I'll give you this is not in order. This is just a list of comics that I really, really enjoy. And it's funny because I had originally written Dave Chappelle, but he doesn't need my bump. Actually, most of these people don't, like Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle. It's almost kind of a given that you're going to like Chappelle. And, and it's almost a given, me being a white dude in my 40s, that I'm going to like Bill Burr, or that I'm going to like, Mark Maron or whatever. But other comics that I personally enjoy and that you may want to check out, if and you've probably heard of most of them. Let's see, Dana Gould, he's one of my favorites. I used to be a writer from The Simpsons, and has a ton of writing credits, and he's a brilliant stand-up comedian. John Mulaney, of course, everybody loves him. He's one of the best joke writers in the world. Dave Attell is my number one favorite comedian, and comics love him. And if you haven't seen him in a while, you should check him out, of course. Tig Notaro, Michelle Wolf, Roy Wood Jr., he's on The Daily Show. His stand-up is great. Neil Brennan, I'm a big fan of Neil Brennan. He co-creator of The Chappelle Show. And his Netflix special was 3 Mics. Guy, he also shows up at The Daily Show occasionally. He's really funny. And then I'm really getting into a guy recently named Ted Alexandro. And you may not have heard of him at all, but he is fucking great. So I highly recommend checking him out, Ted Alexandro. So those are the people that I like. But especially Dave Attell. Anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about this week, and we are out of time. So out of time this week. I kind of went a little overboard on the vape talk. I didn't expect that. I just kept going about it. But it's what I like. Thank you guys. We'll see you next week. This has been Yes! I'm Still Sober. I'm John Raven. Later. Let's ride.